about the place you are living in. Really, I really enjoy it. So Faith and I had an hour-long chat about Kenya and traveling experiences. Actually, this is the RFM meeting on the 2nd of January. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes.
We are live now, and now Faith asked me the first related question to RFM, or learning new technology and learning programming in general. And the question was, Faith, maybe you want to repeat?
Yes. So joining a project that you've not worked with before, using a tool that you've never used before. So the best way to make sure that you get onboarded as fast as possible and being in a position where you can deliver as expected. My question, so what's the best way to go about that?
Yes. So the first thing that I would say is be patient and be brave. It is no problem to join a project where you don't know the technology stack. And it takes time. And the person who's hiring you will know that. So if a technology company will hire you, they will not expect you to be productive before 6 months. So 3 to 6 months is the time that it will take you. It will be the time that the company needs to invest into you with mentorings, onboarding, and so on, before you can actually become productive.
Okay.
So this is also something that everyone understands. Every tech company will understand. So don't worry too much about you don't know the technology stack. All you need is the motivation to learn it.
Okay.
And once you understood that and you're fine with that, then I would say try to fix, well, if you, for example, the experience with RFM was try to fix the small things. You set up the local environment, and if you see some errors in the README, you can already do that. That is a contribution. That is already worthy, right? Don't, for example, my second lightning talk at this Congress, I said embrace non-code contributions from the perspective of the maintainer. If you know new people are joining you and they send you non-code contributions in form of documentation, that's something you love. It is something that not only new people can really maintain, because the person who is the core developer did the setup a long time ago, and he doesn't know what we call in Germany, we would say Berufsblind. The English translation would roughly be you're blind because you did it so many times and you forgot which parts are actually difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great, and you can contribute the small things, the documentations. You can set up, if you have a framework like Vue.js, it makes sense to set up a Hello World application from scratch. That is important because if you have a real world application that's way more complex than a Hello World application, and probably you will learn the basic concept of the framework in this Hello World application. That's better for you to learn and to learn it on the real world application, because you will probably not know what actually is the difference of the framework, what is the custom code that comes from them. If you have the Hello World application, you see, okay, this is just the framework and that's it. And these are the concepts. And here in the real world application, I can see this relates to the tutorial, and this relates to the tutorial. And then you understand. Another thing that really helps you is to check out the tests. If they have tests, great. If they don't, I mean, you're screwed because you cannot check out the tests, right? So tests are also a good way of onboarding people. Tests will show you what the developer who implemented a feature how we expect the application to behave, like the expected behavior. It should document it very, very well.
So if there are no tests,
all the tests, including unit tests, integration tests, and also full stack tests. If we
they
have,
don't
for example, on RFM, we have those cucumber tests. They have the documentation in there. But if you want to go down, if you want to dive deeper, you can also go and check out the unit tests. They should have a description, and they're doing all the edge cases.
Okay. And in the event that either there are no tests or there are not sufficient tests, what do you do in that case?
Then you cannot apply this advice.
Okay.
If there are no tests, you should start to write tests. So that was the situation when I was having my first job as a Rails developer. There were no tests. I was asking the team why there are no tests, and the team told me this was a decision of our boss. He said tests are a waste of time. And this is a very stupid decision, because tests are not a waste of time. It's actually a waste of time if you don't write them, because it will come back to you. If people are leaving the company, all the knowledge goes away, and people who join the company have to somehow make reason of this unmaintainable code that's in there, which is not tested. And so I was writing full stack tests. So the plan was refactor the whole code, and before you do that, you write full stack tests that are testing the application from the level of the browser. And I had to ask our customer, and I had to ask the people who know the requirements how the application should actually behave. And I could put that knowledge into the user story, because the user story defines why an application was behaving like that. What is the user benefit of it? And once I had the full stack tests, I could change certain things. The full stack test should still pass. Or if I wanted to create a new feature, I was creating one full stack test testing the before behavior, one full stack test which was similar, which should be red, which should fail, but was testing the new behavior. And then I added the feature, and both should be green. That's also one technique. Yeah. I haven't learned myself. For example, Vue.js. I haven't learned a lot of Vue.js, even though I'm working for Human Connection as a self-employed person since August or something, or July. And now I'm a full-time developer, and still I haven't learned so much Vue.js. I was busy doing all the improving the deployment pipeline because it was terrible. But setting up tests, I'm currently only I'm only investing time in this test setup because there are no tests, and that's something that we really should solve, especially for our newcomers like Faith.
Yes.
We want to have tests because she's got a problem otherwise. And so I'm only working on that, and I'm not testing so much. I'm not learning Vue.js that much. That will probably come later.
Okay. So the first part of your advice was on like being patient and knowing that every startup or every company will understand that you have still you're productive. So does that mean that you have to set that expectation or confirm that that expectation exists in a company before you commit to that? Or
yeah, I would say this is an unspoken agreement. If you have your first job as a developer, you think you must be productive from the first day on. But the reality is, everyone knows, including the company and the people who hired you, they not expect you to become productive before 3 months.
Okay.
And if you become productive earlier, then well, great, awesome. But don't feel terrible for not being productive in the first 3 months. Ask your mentors. Ask them, can I have a mentor for certain tasks? Do code reviews. Code reviews are a great way of learning things. because you can ask for a code review and get advice, suggestions. You can also review other code and learn how are they doing it. You can also don't feel afraid to check out other repositories for certain best practices. So if you go through code in other repositories, it might be that you come across ways of solving certain problems that you also want to solve, right? So, for example, today I was struggling with how to set up test databases for a Neo4j database in the community edition, right? And this is not possible at all, apparently. There's for Postgres, you have different databases. You have the test, the development, and the production database. If you want to have the same pattern for Neo4j, that doesn't seem to be that easy at all.
Neo4j.
I was checking out how is Neo4j tested itself. Like there must be some software test testing the database itself. And I was trying, how do they do it? And it's complicated. But I mean, it was a try. How
did you write it?
Okay. So I put it in the chat. In Human Connection, the new version has a new database. It's called Neo4j. It's a graph database. It's not a relational database. And this is very different from, for example, Postgres. You don't have a concept of entirely different databases. This exists, but you cannot easily switch them, right? In Rails, you would switch to the test database for tests, and then you switch back to development. And that is not as smoothly at all. And I was expecting that I would see a way of doing it if I go and check out the repository of Neo4j itself. They must have software tests, and they will have the same problem. So how do they do it? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't feel afraid of checking out other repositories, how they solve the same problem. You can search on GitHub. If you type something in the search field, you have a high chance of finding the code that you need. Also, Stack Overflow is your friend, but that's probably something you know already.
Yeah.
And learning by doing. You have to implement something in order to learn and really invest time in solving problems. Also, don't feel afraid of investing or putting a lot of time in software tests. For example, I'm writing about 70% of my development time is only for software testing, and 30% of it is really changing the actual implementation. And that's normal. It's not a problem at all to have more than 50% investing on the actual software tests. Also consider, for example, my development scheme for both RFM and Human Connection is that I'm trying to help other people to become productive than developing everything myself. Because I, for example, suggested that to my boss. If I can advise other people to join and help them, I can help many more people to become productive. That's better than if I work alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So you can also, if you start as a junior developer, I don't know. I mean, you cannot mentor people from the very first start, but you can. If you have this feeling that the strategy of the companies might be improved because you can work more together as a team and help each other, then consider that. Always question the development workflows. I questioned the development workflows in my former company. There was no software testing. There were no requirements. There was no documentation of requirements. There was bad management. You can criticize all of that and try to make it better. If you have suggestions, you can try to implement something like Scrum. There are still many companies around that don't use it or don't use development principles or agile methodologies at all. Usually, that's also one of the advices. Technological problems are smaller than human problems. If you go to university or if you go to school, then you think the technology is the biggest problem. But the reality is, technology problems that relate to technology are usually solvable.
So, okay.
Well, but the problems that come from human beings are much more difficult to solve, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, just to give an example, at Human Connection, we are currently struggling with people in the team because there were struggles like disagreements on things, and that costs a lot of time and energy, and people get frustrated, and or how the network is seen in the media. That's a big problem that can really endanger the success of the project, because other developers might get a false impression or something. Or for RFM, what's the biggest problem with RFM? The biggest problem with RFM is we have no funding at all. We cannot really hire people. It is hard. It is also still a difficult idea. Even though the idea of RFM is very easy, it is still too difficult or too big for people to understand, because the broadcasting is not something that people would expect, that there should be democracy compared to, for example, the parliamentary decisions. There's a similar app that lets you vote on parliamentary decisions, and people have understand it in a second. Whereas for RFM, people might think, okay, why we need democracy in for public media after all, right? That's something that people have to think about until they get the idea. So the way how you explain your project or the application to people. So if you work for a company as a junior developer, you should do, for example, software testing with ordinary people. Do they understand what you're doing? Is the user interface all right? Do they understand the problem? Do they know what the software is, what problem the software is solving for them? Right?
Okay.
That's one human problem that that might interfere with your work in any software company. So long talk, little meaning. Human problems, technology problems. Human problems are way more important and more difficult to solve. If you're becoming a junior developer, don't worry too much about the speed of learning new things. People are not expecting you to be productive before 3 months, anyways. That's okay. That's normal. Try to onboard yourself with tests. If there are no tests, write tests your own. Try to write tests that how you would expect the software to behave. Try to update the documentation. That's something that everyone will love you for.
Okay.
Yeah. More questions? Do you have? Is there something that comes to your mind right now?
Yes, to write about what you've just explained.
Say it again.
To write about what you've just explained.
Write about what I explained. Okay, you're making
Yeah.
notes. You're taking notes.
Like I'll write a blog.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, about all
That's
this.
great. That's great. You can document your own your learning process. You can document it with a blog. That is perfect, because you can that is perfect for self-development, and it's perfect because you can you build up your own audience with your blog, and that
Yeah.
might help you to get more. For example, blogs are awesome for getting new jobs. I have some friends who are doing technical blogs, and they get a lot of job offerings.
Nice. I'm trying to have a habit of documenting anything I find fascinating that I've learned.
Edit
So
everything you find.
fascinating
Yes.
technical wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
You can also.
this is an idea.
Did you ever give a talk at a meeting, at a meetup?
I was supposed to do that last year, December, but I couldn't. So I'll do it in February.
All right, so this is a good training. If you go to a meetup, and I don't know how the situation is in Nairobi, but here in Berlin, meetups are like that. There are two main talks for a meetup, and before that, people can give lightning talks for 5 minutes. Everyone can give a lightning talk spontaneously if they want. So you can just pick one topic that you find interesting and give a 5-minute lightning talk, and that's perfect training.
Yeah. Nice. We do mostly, we have monthly Ruby meetups that I attend, and we always have two talks, and then we have like something like the lightning talk by just a time to make an announcement, not really like a talk.
Then go to the organizer and ask him or her if you can give a lightning talk in advance to
Yes,
these other talks.
I'll give one in February about how Ruby execute your codes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and
So software testing, you said onboard yourself using test, write tests. You also mentioned questioning the development process as part of a technique, right?
say it again.
Questioning the development process of that team, is it part of the technique or no?
Yeah, you should. That's in every company. The processes is something that you can always improve.
Yeah.
How is your deployment pipeline? How is your continuous integration? Do they have software tests? If they don't, they need software tests. How is their way of documenting requirements? Do they use Scrum or Kanban?
Mhm.
And even as someone who just joined the company, you can probably already give constructive criticism, right? You can say, this is not good, and you can make it better if you do this. So depending on your self-confidence, of course, but I was doing that in my first on my first job. And people were not they were not seeing me as they were not seeing me as arrogant or something. They were actually really how to say, they were valuing it, what I was saying, what I was suggesting to them.
Mhm.
So you can, for example, I started to convince my fellow teammates to have a daily stand-up every morning. I also convinced my team members to document requirements in as user stories. And yeah, those small changes, they make a difference.
Makes sense.
It's hard. It's like there's so many things to consider. Being a good software developer or software engineer, it's hard, and it's always different. It's also, if you join another project, they will have other problems, right? If you
Yeah.
think I did a good job on the last project, that doesn't mean that you're doing a good job on the next one, because you have to learn a completely new setup, like new problems, new company, another software, and and new challenges. What you learned in for the old project is not necessarily transferable to or adaptable to the to the new company, you always have a long time of getting on of being onboarded before you can be productive. If I join a new project, I'll need also at least 3 months before I can really be productive. And still, for example, for Human Connection, there's the other core developer who's called Greg. And without Greg, I would be screwed. If he will left the company, I'm screwed. Just like that. There are two core developers, Greg and I. Gone. I cannot maintain the project anymore.
Okay. Is it because you didn't have trust in the first place, right?
Say it again.
Is it because the documentation wasn't well done before?
I wouldn't say the documentation wasn't well done. It's just he has so much knowledge about the current code base, and it's really hard for me to learn this without his help. I always have to ask him why was X implemented in this way. So also really ask your coworkers as often as you can.
Okay.
I hope they are all right. So I hope you have nice coworkers who are not seeing you as an annoyance if you ask them, I don't know, 10 times a day, right? But they should. If I would have, I would be in a company, there's someone new coming in, and I would be available, of course, because yeah, we're all in this together.
Sure. I'll share the link. I'll write a Medium post then.
Nice. I love it. Yes.
All right. I have to leave. I have a meeting. I have a pairing session.
All right.
Right now.
Cool.
Thank you so much. It was fun connecting. And
yes. We didn't talk about RFM, but we talked about programming in general and what to do as a junior developer. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
I will call it a day. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you next week.